dealt with fertility issues for years, went into the bathroom and cried for 45 minutes before I could when I came to, he was no longer living.
Oh.
And, multiply that by other babies.
Yeah.
Podcasts of yours where it's like, if I do acupuncture, I'll get pregnant. We're going to donate a cuddle cot.
The most important factor to a healthy well-being is feeling connected. Welcome to From There to Here,
a safe place where we will explore some of life's adventures so that you do not feel alone. Welcome to From There to Here, friends. It is Jess and Shannon. We have a beautiful and lovely guest with us here today who will introduce further. Like always, we are going to start with our heart lens, where we talk about something that is bringing us joy, maybe a place that we are seeing love or fear in our life. Shannon, what is in your heart lens?
I am actually going to just shout out Pink Door Photography.
Ooh, yeah.
And Lindsay. So this past week, Jess and I had a really fun opportunity to be with Lindsay, and she took some amazing photos of us just being silly. So hopefully we'll get those soon and they'll be up on our website. But she sent a couple just like sneak peeks and they are amazing. So if you ever need photos done, people, Pink Door Photography, Lindsay is awesome.
Yes, that's a good one.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's my heart lens. Jess, what's yours?
My heart lens today is showering on a Friday morning.
Just shower. It doesn't stink in the studio.
I don't always shower on Friday mornings before we do our recordings, and it feels nice to be nice and clean today. I usually am coming straight from my yoga class, and today I worked out a little bit different. So a shower is always something to be grateful for, right?
And the time to shower.
Oh my gosh, right? With a 3-year-old at home, I'm like, he was in the shower with me, I will say. And there are some mornings that I don't have to have him in the shower with me, and those are even better. So
there you go.
Yes. Angel, what is in your heart lens today?
What's in my heart lens is kind of piggybacking a little bit off of yours, Jess, is a little bit of like self-love, self-care. I have really been focusing on every day, just giving myself small tasks, whether it's drinking 80 ounces of water or more, or making sure I do my skincare morning and night, or going for a daily walk. Those are things that I've really just been kind of trying to do. And this week I've been doing really great at doing all of that. So that is something I am proud of. Even going through a harder time, it is nice to just get those little things and take care of myself, even just in the smallest way, by drinking a bottle of water.
Oh
my goodness.
And I love so much that you are calling these little things self-care, because oftentimes I think so many people are like, well, I don't have time for a massage, or I don't have the money for a massage, or whatever.
Or I feel guilty going and spending this time and money on a massage.
Yeah, but self-care is so much more than that. And it's honestly these little things that you talked about, Angel, that I think are the actual self-care things that get you through life. It's not doing the fancy things at all, right?
Right, like a shower on a Friday morning, or
Exactly. Well, I'm glad you could relate to that, and you were like, not like, oh wow, she's a gross one over there.
Nope.
Oh, that's funny. I think Christy on Facebook could also relate, because in her heart lens is another self-care, just getting sleep. Sleep is so important. And and she also added support from her family. So thank you, Christy, for sharing on our social media platform.
If you want to share your heart lens with us, we would love to hear from you. And really, we'd love to hear from you through our website. We have a website now, and it is podcastfromtheretohere.net. Did you notice that, people? It's .net, which is different than .com.
.org.
.biz.
.net.
Podcastfromtheretohere.net. And you can share your heart lens there. Of course, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all the other socials as well. But
and if you ever want to watch these heart lens segments, you can go to YouTube and watch those. That's kind of fun.
Yes.
Like we said, we have a guest with us today. Her name's Angel, and I just want to take a few seconds here to tell you the interesting story of how I found Angel. So, scrolling on Facebook mindlessly one night, just scrolling, and I came upon a GoFundMe that kind of intrigued me. It piqued my interest because the picture on the GoFundMe was of this precious, precious baby. So clicked into it, read the description, and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to talk with this mama. I don't have a similar story to her, but I can feel kind of what maybe she's been through just based on my experience with infertility. And we have a special button for that. There we go. That F word.
Yes.
So reached out to her via that GoFundMe page, asked if she would want to share her incredible story on our podcast. And as you listen today to Angel's story, I really want you to try to put yourself in her shoes. I want you to hear just how amazing she is. And at the end, we're going to ask you to please go to Angel's GoFundMe page and donate to her cause. We'll provide that link in the description of this episode, but also on all of our social media pages and our website. As you listen, you'll hear why I'm asking you to do this and just like the profound message she has and journey that she's been through. Jess and I, before starting the episode, we're kind of talking a little bit about like, this is Angel's story and we want it to be Angel's story. So therefore, we're not sharing any of what like we have gone through in our infertility journeys. However, if you haven't heard episode number 1, the F word, and you want to hear more about what Jess and I have been through, please go to that episode. But really, like I said, this is Angel's story and we want to honor that. So I am going to turn it over to Angel in whatever capacity and wherever she wants to start her beautiful story. Angel, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for responding to my plea to come on the podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here with us. I know that there are other mamas out there that need to hear this story. So I'm turning it over to you, mama.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having me. That was a wonderful introduction, so I really appreciate it. I guess just to start my story, I have dealt with fertility issues for years. My husband and I got married back in 2017. His name is Garrett, so you'll hear his name dropped, throughout when I'm speaking.
Thanks for letting Angel share your story, Garrett, with us.
So we got married in 2017. We knew we wanted to grow our family, but we didn't start right away. I knew that I might have some fertility issues, just being diagnosed with endometriosis and PCOS early on. I was never told that I can't have kids, just that might pose some challenges.
Okay.
So in 2018, I went to the doctor saying, I want to start growing my family. The first step they did was surgery. They wanted to remove any endometriosis that I had. And then they do a procedure called ovarian drilling, basically where they try to.
That's like a traumatic name.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It sounds a lot more violent than
drilling.
Yeah, it's basically when you have PCOS, you have extra follicles and it kind of sends mixed signals to your body. So you don't ovulate on a regular basis because your body's like, oh, that follicle is going to ovulate or this follicle is going to ovulate. So ovarian drilling, basically they go in and they remove the excess fluid and excess follicles so that hopefully less are competing, trying to ovulate at the same time. And it helps you become more regular. It's my understanding of it. People with a little bit more of a medical degree might have a better explanation than that. So we did that surgery, and then that was in April of 2018. In the beginning of 2019, we decided, let's give this a try. Let's try to start our family. So we just started trying. We tried for about 6 months with no luck. Usually doctors will ask you to wait a full year.
Yes.
Before coming in, given my history.
Told me to lie about that actually, because she had been through it and she was like, "Lie. I've been trying it for 6 months. Tell them you've been trying a year."
They'll never
Yep.
know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
with the surgery, my doctor's like, yeah, let's just try getting you on some medication. So we did some medicated cycles where they gave me medicine to help me ovulate, and then we could time it. We knew exactly when I was ovulating so that we could make
Yep.
sure that we were trying at the exact right moment.
Yep.
Remember which
did that.
medicines you used?
I used
I was on Clomid,
I was on Clomid, and then I was also on there's
Letrozole.
Letrozole. I did both of those,
Yep.
and then I did the trigger shots that, okay, so
Oh,
you're
wow.
gonna
Yep.
late in the next 72 hours. So
Yes.
every day for the
Mhm.
next week, we need you trying. Um,
So then it becomes like a to-do list, right?
More of a
Yes.
chore than a
Yeah.
romantic act.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, it's like, okay, it's almost the end of the night. Like, we got to get this taken care of.
Yeah.
I don't care how tired you are or if
We
you feel like crap.
Yes.
You better
Yeah,
perform.
Yes.
right. Exactly. Which isn't what you want, when you're
No.
connected with your spouse. So, but you do what you got to do.
Mhm.
Throughout trying for a family, there's an amazing amount of things that you'll justify doing that
Oh,
Oh my
just
God.
yeah,
crazy.
true.
Like, if I
You're
talked to myself 10 years
Preaching to
ago.
the choir. Yes.
Yes. um, so we tried for about 6 months just with those medications. That wasn't working. So in 2020, we did IUIs. We did 4 IUIs over the year. Wasn't working. We were told IVF is our best chance.
Yeah.
So starting in 2021, we started our IVF journey. I did one egg retrieval, which gave us 10 embryos, which is an amazing amount. So
Yeah.
we have not had to do a second egg retrieval, which
Wow,
we are,
that's incredible.
yeah, we're extremely thankful
Yeah.
for that, because I know that is not everyone's experience. So we are thankful for that. In May of 2021, it was actually the day after Mother's Day, we did our second transfer. Our first transfer did not work. It was a fresh transfer right after the egg retrieval, and we just kind of thought maybe my body had gone through enough with the egg retrieval that it just wasn't the right time for my body.
Okay.
And all of these things, I know when I was good, I did a few failed IUIs as well, never IVF, but like this is so emotional. Every step of this whole process, it's not just like you're talking about it so nonchalantly now, right? But like, I don't know about you, but when I was in this, like, it's just an emotional roller coaster because you're like, oh, we're definitely going to get pregnant this time, right? Because you're like, you want to be hopeful and positive, right? But then when it doesn't, oh,
I remember after our first transfer, our fresh transfer, my hopes were so high. I'm like, we have done so much. I have taken an
So many drugs.
huge amount of medications. I just underwent this surgery. My embryos are growing. We're 3 days past that. Things are happening. Like, we've just done so much. This has to work. How could this
Yes.
not work?
Yes.
yes.
And I remember I got my blood drawn that morning. I never tested at home. My doctor told me not to.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't. Got my blood drawn that morning, and I get my results quicker than my doctor gets them.
Oh, on my
I
chart.
was able to see what my beta came back at.
Okay.
And it was like 4, which is a negative test.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would a positive pregnancy test show your beta to be at?
It's the app says that anything over 25 is considered pregnant.
Okay.
At this time that IVF tests you, you're technically 4 weeks pregnant. So when you should be getting your period.
Okay.
So they want it at 50 or higher at that point.
And does that number need to continue to increase if you're having a healthy pregnancy?
It does. Every 48 to 72 hours, it should be doubling.
Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
my clinic with my protocol, they test me at 4 weeks, and then they'll have me come in 2 days later. And then again, and it's usually like 3 follow-up blood tests just to make sure the number is doubling appropriately. And if it's not, they can kind of talk to you about what might happen if your body's going to miscarry, if they think this might, go another way. so they can kind of talk to you through those steps.
Okay. And so this is the first or the second time you've done IVF that you had a 4?
This was the very first time.
Very first time. Okay. Okay.
Yep. So I remember I was so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I opened the results at work and I went into the bathroom and cried for 45 minutes before I could like compose myself to come back out.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even call my husband to tell him. I had to text him and say it didn't work because I couldn't get the word. So talk about it now, but in that moment, my voice just didn't work.
Yeah.
I couldn't like think the words, let alone speak them.
And I don't know about you, but sometimes I think about like as the woman, like we're responsible for that communication, right? Like
it's our body and we know first.
Right. We know like in what, I don't know of any situation that the man has known first, right? So it's so difficult to have to be the messenger of this message that it didn't work all these times, right? Ugh.
And I don't know if you guys think the way that I do, but in my head, I'm like, this has to work. So I'm already planning. I'm like, I'm going to leave work early. I'm going to go get a onesie. I'm going to, show planning how I'm going to surprise my husband and my parents and anyone else that I wanted to share with. And
all the Pinterest ideas, start scrolling those. Jess bought a book for her husband.
Which I never gave him. Clear, like, but and
it
a wild
just all comes crashes down. So it is. The whole journey is very emotional. There's never a moment that's not. So that first one failed. Our second one was the day after Mother's Day. We went in and I'm like, oh, this would be so great if this worked. We're on this symbolic Mother's Day. This is what I want. And we ended up being pregnant. We were successful. And we're like, okay, we finally kind of let out a sigh, like, I am finally pregnant. It worked. And we're like, okay, well, we just have to make it through these couple blood tests and make sure that my numbers are doubling. And we did. And okay, well, we just need to make it to the viability scan. We want to see a heartbeat. And we did. And
checking all these milestone markers off.
Yes. And we want to make it through the first trimester. And we did. And we started telling family. I spent hours with my husband, Garrett, coming up with like, how are we going to announce this? How are we going to post this on social media? Like, how do we want to do this? And
I
wanted to incorporate our fertility journey. And I also wanted to be there like for moms who are still struggling, going through this process. And, at 20 weeks, we had our anatomy scan. And we're like, okay, we are in the clear. Everything is great. The night before our anatomy scan, I had just a little bit of cramping, nothing, not even close to like a menstrual cycle. It was just enough that I noticed it.
And some doctors would say like, that's normal.
Right. Because you have round ligament pain and, what part of your body isn't changing during pregnancy. So I didn't think much of it. We went in for our anatomy scan. This is the big one. I'm like, they're going to look at gender. They're going to look at all the things on the baby to make sure baby's doing okay and growing how they're supposed to. We went in, they found the heartbeat. I'm like, oh, that's great. And they did the anatomy scan and he was doing fantastic. Everything on him, was coming back perfect. And then at the very end of the appointment, I just mentioned to the ultrasound tech, I'm like, hey, I had some cramping. And she's like, well, let me just take a look. Let me just look again at your cervix. And she did a transvaginal ultrasound, so not over the belly.
And
she's like, yep, that is why you're having cramping. You don't have a cervix left.
And
I'm like, what does that mean? She's like,
what does that mean?
She's like, you're in labor. She said at 20 weeks.
Was your husband there with you?
He was.
Okay.
He was. So we were just trying to take take in what she was saying. We're like, okay, well,
Stop
we
it.
can stop labor. Yeah,
Yes.
we have never been through a loss. We don't know what this means. Like maybe this is something that happens all the time and it's easily fixed. We didn't know what to expect. And she said, she looked at me, she's like, "Are you working right now?" And I said, "Yeah." She's like, you're not going back to work." She's like, "You're going to be on bed rest."
Wow.
So after that appointment, we went back out to the waiting room and I remember thinking,
What the hell?
I don't know how we're going to get positive news.
Mm-hmm.
And we went back to meet with the doctor. So about 10 minutes after the waiting room, we went to meet with the doctor, and our doctor's like, you need to be prepared to not, sorry,
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you need to be prepared to not leave with the baby.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Um,
So
so
the nurse is like, you're gonna be on bed rest. Are you thinking like, I'm going home today? I'm just not gonna be able to go to work. Not, I'm delivering a baby today.
um, yeah, and my doctor, she did send me home. I
Okay.
guess to clarify, she meant you will not be leaving a hospital with a baby.
Oh,
Um,
oh.
so
So
she's
she
like,
didn't think you were gonna like bed rest was gonna work. That
no, she said we're gonna do everything we can, and she said I've seen it happen where women can carry to term, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to happen in this case.
oh my
Wow.
gosh.
So we went home. I was on bed rest, and I was still like,
I'm doing
this. Yep, this. It's happened. People have carried to term, and like I'm gonna be one of those people.
Yeah.
Um, and our that doctor's appointment was on a Thursday. She's like, if you have any cramping or bleeding or anything like that, you need to come in right away. Otherwise, you're going to take it easy. We're going to start checking on you every week, and we're going to go as long as we can go. Viability is 24 weeks. And for people who don't know, 24 weeks just means that the hospital can work on your baby if they're born early. It does not guarantee that you go home with a baby. It does not guarantee that your baby will have a long, happy life. It just means that they can work on that baby when and if they're born at that gestation. So I was only a couple of weeks away. So at on Sunday morning,
And like
I
listeners,
went,
I want you to recognize that Angel knows the exact like days of the week, times of the day. Like this stuff sticks with you.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it's crazy to think because this all happened in 2021.
Yeah.
And
Feels
I
like an
feel like
instant
it's,
ago.
Yeah.
yeah. And even now, like my
Yeah.
voice is breaking. It's still hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that Sunday morning, I showered, I got ready. You can do like a quick shower. So I showered, sat back down, I used the restroom, and I was bleeding. And I'm like, okay, we need to go to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
They admitted me, and did a cervical check, and they're like, we can feel the baby's head.
Whoa.
So, and I didn't have any additional cramping or anything. I didn't feel any of this happen. I was about 4 centimeters dilated at that point.
Wow.
They're like, you're admitted. We're going to try to keep this baby in,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know what's going to happen. So we spent the night. That Monday morning, my doctor came in. It was her day off, my OB. That was her day off. She came in and she did another cervical check, and she's like, he's in your birth canal. If he stays there, you risk damage to your birth canal and your ability to have another
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
wow.
baby in the future.
Yeah.
And they can't,
So
this is going to be maybe a silly question to people who are in the medical field, but they can't push him back up, right? Like that doesn't work.
no, I think he would have, and I don't know. I never asked that question, but I would imagine that he would just slide back out because your cervix is what keeps your baby in there, and mine wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. So she's like, you can make the decision to wait, and it could be a couple more days. And you risk that damage to
But
your
only a couple
reproductive
more days.
organs, and,
Right.
and it's causing stress to your baby. That's not where they want to be. They're stuck in a birth canal, which is not healthy for them.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to be induced, and we can try to get him out and have him birthed alive so you can spend time with him.
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness.
So we chose to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born alive. And he was alive for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
During that hour, I was able to hold him for about, I think, 10 minutes. But because he was born, my placenta abrupted, it detached. So I was bleeding internally when this was all happening.
Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
God.
So
More.
I ended up coding. I called the code. I had to have multiple blood transfusion, plasma transfusions. When I came to, he was no longer living.
Oh.
Mm.
Do you want to
So,
share his name, Angel?
yeah, his name is Nolan.
Nolan.
Yep,
Was
Nolan
your
Jean Carter.
husband,
Yep, what we named him.
was your
Uh,
husband with him that whole time or with you?
yep.
I mean, what, there's so
Because
much happening.
yeah, when I coded and I passed out, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember a ton of everything, but my husband said like within seconds there was 20 doctors in that room. Um, my husband had Nolan, he was holding him. Um, there was a nurse specifically assigned to Garrett to make sure that he was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the doctors were just doing everything they could to help me. So they had, and when someone codes, they have doctors and nurses and all types of medical staff that have very specific jobs. There's someone recording to the minute, to the second, who's making what call when. Someone's trying to get an IV, someone's getting the transfusion for the blood, someone is trying to get this. They had a pasture there for last rites if we needed that for myself or Nolan.
Goodness. So
Um,
scary for your husband to be watching all of this.
yeah, yep, and that's why they gave him a nurse too,
Yeah.
or someone to sit with him. Um,
Did you have any other family there or friends or
no,
anyone
this was
around?
like at the height of COVID.
Oh, right.
No one else was allowed in. Um, After our loss, we had to get permission from the hospital to make an exception to the rule to have my mom come in after our loss. And
Wow.
uh, the hospital was, I mean, amazing. They made this exception for us.
Yeah.
They had an hour time limit
Mm-hmm.
for how long you could have visitors. They said your mom can come in. One visitor can come in for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
How do you
And
pick the one person? Wow.
yeah, you pick one person and you get an hour, and that's it. We did not, they did not enforce that hour. My
Oh,
mom was able to stay longer. I mean, and
I
I'll
love
say this
when
for,
people make human decisions and not policy decisions.
yes. And for every single one of our losses, the medical staff, the doctors, the nurses that we have worked with, I've said this since we lost Nolan, is that it's a long healing process.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with the compassion of your medical team when you're going through something like this, because I can't imagine going through this and then having a medical professional come in and not treat me like a human being.
Yeah.
I don't know how you move past that.
Mm-hmm.
So every single person I've interacted with has been amazing. So that was our story with Nolan.
Mm-hmm.
We had a long healing process. Obviously, physically for me, mentally, emotionally, for myself, Garrett, our entire extended family. Like, everyone knew that we were trying. We've always been super open about our journey, and everything that we've been trying for years. And we decided we want to try again.
Mm-hmm.
And you
With
still had embryos, correct?
yeah, Yep, we still had embryos. So we had 9 embryos left at that point. We talked to my OB and we said, okay, so why did this loss happen?
Can I ask
And
how long did you wait?
it was IVF, their policy. My clinic says if you have a natural birth, they will not do another transfer until after 6 months.
Okay.
Is the minimum.
And you had a natural birth.
Correct. Yep. Yep. This was a natural birth. Or a vaginal birth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we wanted to start trying. We knew we wanted to start trying after that 6 months. But it ultimately ended up taking closer to a year. Before we were able to do almost a year before we were able to get our transfer to work.
Okay.
Within that time was Nolan's due date, correct?
Yeah.
That's got to be hard.
Yeah. It was. It's crazy to think how many days of the year I'm like, I want to take the day off. I want to spend time for me. And I'm like, do I take his birth date off? Do I take his due date off? Do I take our transfer date off? And multiply that by other babies.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think, like, what do you prioritize?
Yeah.
If you only get so many days off or you want to do something special, it's just another component that I never thought I would think about in my life.
Right. That you would have to.
Yeah.
So you were asking your doctor, like, why this happened?
Yeah, I asked my doctor, why do we think this happened? And she said after the results of the amniotic fluid after delivery, she said there was an infection. I said that's how you got an infection. It was positive for group B, which is, they test every single pregnant woman for it. It's something that happens in some pregnancies, not all pregnancies. Like, you can have it in one pregnancy and then in your next, you might not have it. It's just a natural bacteria that's in your body that is not healthy for a pregnancy. They usually test you right before delivery. So she said it was an infection. We think the infection caused your cervix to shorten and for you to go into labor. We don't think that this will happen to you again. We think it's a one-time fluke occurrence. This is just one of those things that happen, is how they explained it. So they didn't have any reason to think we shouldn't get pregnant again. They're like, go ahead, get pregnant. We don't have any reason to worry, but we'll watch you closer because of your history, but we're not worried.
Did you have to wait that year because you couldn't get into the fertility clinic, or were there other reasons?
No, my body wasn't responding to the meds. So we were trying. So after 6 months, we tried a transfer. My body wasn't responding how it needed to. My lining wasn't getting where they needed it, even with all of these meds that they had me on. And then I remember looking at one point, I'm like looking at like the serving size or what the prescription size, the normal prescription size. And I was on 4 times the normal dose of, and I'm like, how is my body not responding to this? How is it not working? I also had retained tissue after the delivery. So we delivered in September for Nolan. And in February, I had a follow-up surgery to remove that. And they did the ovarian drilling again and the endometriosis. So my body just needed a bit more time to heal. And they canceled our transfer because my lining wasn't working. They're like, well, let's try again next month. And we tried again.
And now you have to have more meds.
Yeah.
Can you share with listeners, like, how much is one round of meds for IVF?
My husband and I are fortunate. Our employer does cover.
That is incredible.
That does not often.
No, and they just started coverage the year that we started IVF. It just
okay. Kudos and applause to your company.
Yes,
because that is unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you know how
So
much those are though?
so some meds that I've had to pay out of pocket for some.
Mm.
And there were some that I just saw what insurance paid.
Yeah.
I would say if I would have paid the same cost as insurance for each one of those cycles, it could have ranged, just depending on the meds, anywhere from like 2 to 10 grand just for the meds, not the doctor's appointments or the blood draws or the actual procedures, or the surgeries that you have to have leading up to it.
Yeah.
A total round of IVF, I think, is somewhere with like $25,000 to $30,000
Yeah.
per round. So when you retrieve the eggs, do the transfer, it is not cheap. It is not an easy process. Um, there's so much that goes into it, and you learn so much through the process too. I can
Things you don't want to
talk.
learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or no.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone asks about female reproductive systems, I'm like, I got you. I got.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yep. It's just stuff that you pick up along the way.
Yeah.
So we tried 2 transfers. Both of them were canceled because my body wasn't responding. They sent me to a specialist in Madison to see if I had some kind of like ongoing infection in your uterine lining. So I had a uterine biopsy, and that came back normal. So we're like, well, what the heck? Why isn't this working? It worked before. Why isn't it working now? And we ended up switching to a natural cycle, which is less meds. They don't put you on as many meds, and they just kind of watch your body. And when your body naturally has a cycle, they just kind of go along with that versus trying to induce a cycle.
Okay.
And that ended up working for us. And so we got pregnant again, and we were nervous, but we're like, they said that it was a fluke. We don't have a reason to worry.
And why in the
And
world
so,
would this happen to me a second time?
yep. And like
Right.
the chances of a loss after, you see those statistics, and the chances after a loss after that first trimester are like less than 1%.
Right.
And for it to happen more than once is like next to nothing.
Yeah.
So, I had a different doctor, same practice. My doctor, between the first and second pregnancy, had moved to another state. So same practice, different doctor, practice. They all work together. They all talk. So I had met this doctor previously, and he's like, let's just watch you closely. Let's just every other week, let's just have you in, and let's just check how your cervix is doing. If your cervix starts shortening, we're going to do a surgical procedure. It's called a cerclage. It's basically they do a spinal block, so you can't from the waist down. They go in and they sew your cervix shut. They use like a silk strip, sew it shut to help keep it closed so that you can't go into labor with that baby. And then he's like, but I don't think you're going to need that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy what they do. Yeah. He's like, but I don't think we're going to need that.
Okay.
So then, we're doing our bi-weekly appointments, and at 18 weeks, we go in and my cervix is short. It's shorter than what they like to see. And they're like, okay, well, let's do this cerclage. So I had the cerclage that week. And they're like, okay, so you just take it easy.
Did they put you on bed rest?
No, just no heavy lifting. They're like, yep, this surgical procedure should do what it needs to do. Just take it easy. Don't go on like big long walks. Don't do any kind of like strenuous exercise. Just watch a lot of Netflix, basically. So we were doing that, and that, by the time I had that cerclage, we were closer to 19 weeks. At 19 weeks, 6 days, so almost exactly 20 weeks. During the day, I had some cramping, and I'm like, this cramping feels a little bit more severe. By 7:00 that night, I'm like, Garrett, we need to go to the emergency room. These are real contractions. These are not These are not just growing pains.
And here we
So
go again. Like what?
at
How
the same time,
I don't even know how you would survive one. But then it's like, what the hell? Like here we go again.
yeah. So we go in, and because I'm like 4 hours from being 20 weeks, I have to go to the emergency room and not labor and delivery. Just because the 20 weeks is like the cutoff. So they're like, okay, just go to the emergency room. They gave me some meds to stop the contractions. They listened to the baby's heartbeat. Baby's heartbeat was great. I was there all night. I think I got back at like 4 or 5 in the morning. And they're like, tomorrow morning, just check in with your regular OB. We got the contractions to stop.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Yep, medicine. It's medicine that you take. It's like every so many hours for 24 or 48 hours to
Okay.
stop your contractions. Basically, calms all you. I think it's a muscle relaxer. It kind of calms your uterus down from contracting.
Okay.
They're like, just check in with your OB because you were in the emergency room. Your OB wants to know. Just check in with them tomorrow morning.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day, I went in to my OB at like 11 a.m. and they visually looked the stitch for the cerclage for the medical procedure. They're like, that looks good. It looks like it's holding. Baby's heartbeat is good. You can go back to work tomorrow. We're just gonna have you take it easy. You're fine to go back to work. So I remember texting my boss at like noon that day and being like, hey, I'm gonna be back to work tomorrow. Doctor cleared me. I just have to take it easy, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Is it kind of like a sigh of relief? Like, whew, that was scary, but okay, we're okay.
Yep, exactly. Because I'm like, well, if my
Like
doctor's not worried, if my doctor's clearing me for work,
it must
then must be okay. So,
you just want to like also wrap yourself in bubble wrap and just like not want to
Fast forward 9 months.
any wrong way. I don't know. I feel like how I would feel. Like,
yeah, like it's hard not to get in your head. I know I've listened to previous, podcasts of yours where it's like, if I do acupuncture, I'll get pregnant. If I eat this diet, I'll get pregnant.
I'm gonna get pregnant. Yep.
And that thought process continued into pregnancy. If I just take it easy, I'll stay pregnant.
Yeah.
If I, make sure I'm getting enough sleep, I'll stay pregnant.
Yep.
If I, XYZ, that it'll be okay.
yeah.
And of course, like my anxiety was like through the roof because we're at the same gestation.
Yep.
As Nolan was almost 21 weeks when he was born, and we are at 20 weeks.
Yep.
We are right there. And so I saw my doctor. I went home, just taking it easy. I remember my mom was over. I was telling her about what happened because she came over to watch our dog. And I was telling her about what happened and what the doctor said. I said, so we should be good. And my mom goes home, and about like 1:30 in the afternoon, I get up to use the bathroom and I'm bleeding.
Oh my gosh.
Back to the doctor I go. Go back to the doctor, and they're like, let's take a look. And they do an ultrasound, and she didn't have a heartbeat.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
Oh,
No.
take your time, please.
I
mean, that quick, like that was 12
within
hours.
hours. Yeah. Within hours. Like she had a heartbeat at 11 a.m. and by 2 in the afternoon, she didn't. So, they're like, she's passed away.
Yeah.
We're going to admit you to the hospital today. You have to deliver her. So,
Did
even though
go to that appointment with you?
Yeah, he was at all the appointments.
Garrett, you're a rock star.
Yes.
Yeah. He's so supportive through everything. I couldn't ask for a better husband.
Yeah.
So they're like, you're going to get induced and you're going to deliver. And I think what some people think of, when you go through a loss when you go through a loss at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, you can do that at home. When you are 20 weeks, you can't. You have to go through, you have to deliver that baby just like you were term. Obviously, the delivery is different. Your baby's a lot smaller,
Yeah.
but you still have to get induced. You still have to go through contractions. You're still offered an epidural. You're still offered, if your baby's breech, you still have to get a C-section.
Mm.
You know, it's
And you know you're
still
not
the
going home
full,
with your baby.
yep.
Yeah.
So we lost Brooklyn.
How
Brooklyn was hurting.
how were the doctors when you were going into labor to make sure that you didn't code again?
They, it's kind of an interesting story. So I went back to the same hospitals, the same delivery center. Um, the nurse that I had when I was delivering Brooklyn, she was a nurse that was just training when I delivered Nolan. So she was there for Nolan's delivery, and now she was my full, obviously trained nurse,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a year and a half later at Brooklyn's delivery. And she's like, I saw your name and my heart sank. She's like, I
Oh,
did not, and it's amazing to think like, you know, I barely remember, you know, coding with Nolan and all that. And she remembered me.
yeah.
And um she was amazing. She's like, Angel was a previous code, so before we even start to induce her, we are going to have the crash cart here. We are going to get a
Freaking
second
scary.
IV in case you lose too much blood. We are, you know, we're going to have everything here so that if we have to call a code, it is literally 10 seconds, not a minute before everything is ready.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something that's just on my medical charts and they just prepare for. And I make sure anytime I'm talking to a doctor, if they're asking about that, I do say like I've previously coded due to blood loss.
Mm-hmm.
And they just prep for it just in case that would happen. Um, so we went through, you know, full labor delivery for Brooklyn.
How long did that labor take?
Her labor was actually really fast. They gave me the medicine to induce labor at like 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
And she was born before midnight.
Okay.
So hers went really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, it's just hard to think about the whole process.
Yeah.
You know, you're delivering a baby that's not alive,
Yeah.
and you are not. Again, I am not going home with a baby.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, like I've been pregnant for 20 weeks.
yeah. For a lot of people, I know they don't think of pregnancy in weeks. It's 5 months. You're 5 months pregnant. You're
You're
over
halfway.
halfway there.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, your baby is a baby. They
Yeah.
have all their
Heartbeat.
fingers, all their
Yeah.
toes. Yeah, they have a heartbeat. They have their facial features. Like
Yeah.
we could pick up features on Nolan and Brooklyn. Like this is Garrett's, this is Angel's. Like you can see all of those little features.
Yeah.
Um,
How much did
and,
they weigh about?
Nolan was just under a pound.
Okay.
Brooklyn, she was smaller. She was about 9 ounces.
Okay.
So she was smaller than Nolan. Nolan just was a bigger baby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and about a week further along. So obviously he had a little bit more time to grow.
Yeah.
And so they're little. Um, but you know, in my brain, you know, you're like, okay, I've been pregnant for 5 months. I didn't think, you don't think of your baby as having all his fingers, having all their toes, having their dad's nose and their mom's lips
Yeah.
at that point. And they do.
Yeah.
And so we lost Brooklyn. And I was officially diagnosed then after that loss with incompetent cervix, meaning my cervix, once a baby gets to a certain weight, cannot hold that baby in.
Oh,
So for any future
that's the
pregnancies,
diagnosis. That's the name of the diagnosis. Incompetent cervix.
yep,
Like, yeah.
yep, incompetent cervix, or a lot of people call it IC, or they'll abbreviate it IC.
Mm.
But it basically means your cervix is not strong enough to hold the baby.
So this is not an infection this time.
I was diagnosed with incompetent cervix. My cervix started shortening around that 18 weeks. We saw that. They did the surgery, but before they could get that surgery done, an infection got in, and that's what caused her to pass away.
Oh my goodness.
So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation where if you get an infection, it can cause your cervix to shorten. If your cervix shortens, it can lead an infection into your uterus. So after Brooklyn, we did learn that my cervix was not strong enough to hold it. But they can do things to help for future pregnancy.
How long do you get to stay in the hospital after Brooklyn is born?
Brooklyn was born at midnight and we went home the next afternoon.
Golly.
Oh, wow.
And Nolan, we were there longer because of the blood loss.
Okay.
We were there for 2 nights. 2 nights.
Okay.
Sunday night, we hadn't delivered him yet. We were there Monday, Tuesday, went home Wednesday. And so we lost Brooklyn, talked to the doctor, and they said, you can get pregnant again.
Right.
If you want. If you choose to get pregnant, this is what we will do. We're going to have you meet with a maternal fetal medicine doctor, MFM. They specialize in this. They are going to help you. They will do that same surgery, the cerclage surgery, at 13 weeks. That's when your cervix is long, it's closed, it's healthy. If we do this stitch, we can get it closer to your uterus, where the baby is, so you have a better chance at stronger. And the statistics, and I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but they're good. You get it's called preventative because you're doing it before you need it. You get a preventative cerclage. The chances of making it to term are high.
And so you have hope. We're going to do this again. We're not going to stop. We're going to do it a third time. I have hope. They know what to do now.
And everything. So, we met with a maternal fetal medicine specialist. Again, this was a natural delivery. So I had that 6-month waiting, which I just focused on myself, getting healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, all of that.
Yeah.
So we end up getting pregnant again. It's another IVF round. Get pregnant again.
Was that right away, within the after 6 months, or did it take a little bit like it did with Brooklyn?
Nope. We were able to do it right away. We didn't have any canceled transfers or anything like that. We got pregnant pretty close to that 6 months after. It actually ended up being within a couple weeks of when we did the transfer for Brooklyn. So all the milestones were the same as Brooklyn. Our transfer for Brooklyn was mid-November, and our transfer for Grant, our third baby, was beginning of November. So it was within a couple weeks. So, at Christmas time, I was still in that first trimester. It was all the same feelings, all the same milestones. So get pregnant again, go through everything. And I'm like, we have a game plan. Everything's going to be, I have more than one doctor looking after me. I have my regular OB. I have my maternal fetal medicine doctor that I go down to Milwaukee for. Everything's going to be fine.
Nolan and Brooklyn have taught my body and taught the doctors what my body needs.
Yep, exactly. And so at 13 weeks, I have the surgery. Everything goes great. My cervix is long, it's closed. Everything's healthy. I am going in not weekly. I'm going in monthly, and I am doing urine tests for infection. We're going to catch an infection before it gets in. We're going to treat it. everything goes good. We go to our anatomy scan. Everything's great. Cervix is great. We go to our fetal echo, which is a really close look up at the baby's heart, which is something they recommend in some pregnancies, not all.
Okay.
They just recommended it for us. Everything's great. Baby's heart is great.
And like,
Baby
do you
is
just
healthy.
hold your breath every time you go? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's got to be some like PTSD going into a hospital or like a clinic to get all these
Yeah.
tests and to just hold your breath that, okay, we made it through that one. Hold my breath for the next one. Okay, we made it through that one. And
Yeah. I definitely picked up a lot of hobbies, calm hobbies like crocheting or reading, or, I would work on like little projects here and there to keep my mind busy, especially during those wait times. Like, some blood tests, you get the results same day. Some blood tests take a week, or when you're, at that ultrasound. And I've learned, when I go to an ultrasound, I ask the ultrasound tech, whoever it is, can you do the heartbeat first? I just need to know that heartbeat is there.
Let's just get the part over with so that I can breathe through the rest of this.
Yeah. And at this point, between all our fertility treatments and our pregnancies, I can look at the screen and know what's the heartbeat, what's not. Like I can see I can kind of pick that out. So I don't want to say it's
that you never really wanted to have.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I did not think I would be able to identify my ovaries and my follicles and the lining and my cervix and all the parts of the baby,
right.
And the placenta and which direction's what. I didn't think I'd ever do that. So we, at 22 weeks, we had the fetal echo. They looked at the baby's heart. Everything's great.
You've passed 20 weeks. You've made it further than any other baby.
Exactly. We made it to 24 weeks. We hit viability.
Yes.
We're like, if something happens, they can work on the baby. The chances of survival aren't guaranteed, but it's there.
Yeah.
We made it to 25 weeks, and I read online. I had an app that's for pregnancy after loss. It's just a little gentler, but it still does the milestones for you. And on there it said chance of survival if a baby's born at 25 weeks is over 50%. And I'm like, that's amazing.
Your hopes start to get going now. You start to like see the end, and
and I started getting hopeful. It was the third time. It's the third time I'm planning a baby shower, and I'm like, this one's going to happen. And
so the other two, there wasn't a baby shower.
No, we planned one with Nolan. We had the invites out, and after our loss, we had to cancel it. We had to reach out to everybody and say we're not having a baby shower. Brooklyn, we started planning it, but I did not send the invites. I was very hesitant to send the invites.
Did you have a room kind of started or anything like that?
Yeah,
okay.
We have the glider and the crib and the dresser, and we had so many people because so many people were so supportive of us through our whole journey trying to get pregnant that as soon as they found out, they're like, take all my baby stuff. Here's a bassinet, here's clothes, here's bathtubs. So we have an entire nursery set up.
Okay.
And it's still set up. And I remember building that crib when I was pregnant with Nolan, like a week before his loss. And with Brooklyn, I didn't let myself buy a lot of things.
Sure.
With Grant, we hit 24 weeks. I spent so much time. I'm like, this is what I want for my baby shower. I'm buying these things. I'm looking at like, what robe am I going to wear when I deliver? And what things do I need for a hospital bag? And do I pack a hospital bag? And I remember after Nolan, I went into the hospital with Nolan. I had nothing. I didn't have a phone charger, nothing. I literally walked in off the street, and the hospital had everything I needed, but I had none of my own things. And with Brooklyn, I remember I'm like, this is such a sad thought. But at 18 weeks, when we said we need that surgery, I'm like, I'm packing a hospital bag because I don't want to go without my things, which is, again, something I never thought I would think.
Right.
With Grant, we hit 25 weeks. I'm like, things are great. And I started having some cramping.
Mm.
And it was, I remember waking up at like midnight and I'm like, I'm having some cramping. I'm like, I'm not able to sleep through it. It doesn't hurt, but it's there. I notice it. It's not on any kind of like regular basis, not like a real contraction. Went to the bathroom and I lost my mucus plug.
Mm.
So, I woke Garrett up at 1 a.m. and I said, we have to go to the emergency room, have to get checked out.
What is his response? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, we're doing this
It's
third time?
very sympathetic. It's, I'm sorry you're going through this.
Oh my God.
And okay, let's go. Like, it sucks. We're both tired. It's 2 a.m, 1 a.m. We want to be sleeping. I'm exhausted. He's exhausted. We don't want to be dealing with going to the ER like every time. Like,
Right.
we have these moments, you drive to the ER and it's like silent in the car because you don't want to talk. What are you supposed to say? So, but it's 100% supportive. Like, I am so sorry, Angel, like that you and your body are dealing with this. And obviously, and he's dealing with it too. But he's like, I'm not the one physically experiencing this. So I know it's different. His experience and my experiences with this are different. They both suck. Nobody wants them.
Yeah.
But they're different. And he's supportive about that. And he understands that and he validates that and validates my feelings. And so he went to the ER, go up to labor and delivery, and they put the strap that goes over your belly to monitor contractions. And nothing's getting picked up, even though I'm still feeling them. Nothing's registering. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a good sign, right? Because if it's not registering, maybe it's just a growing pain.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just uterus stretching or something. And they just monitoring me. And we went, we were there for about 5 hours. We ended up going home. They're like, if this continues, if it stays at this, okay. If they get worse or more frequent, come back in. So I got home at like 6 a.m. I laid down to try to go to sleep. I fell asleep for like an hour or so. And
what contractions feel
I
like.
woke her up.
So like this is what this feels like. Yeah. Okay.
And I know what I've experienced with previous losses. I know what the beginning contractions feel like. I know what the end ones feel like because I've also been through those.
Right.
So mid-morning, I wake up and I'm having cramping and it's getting worse and it's getting more often. And it's getting to the point where I can't talk through them. It hurts too bad to talk through them. So I'm like, Garrett, we have to go back in. So this is less than 12 hours later. We're back in the ER and they put me on fluids. Contractions still were not picking up on the machine, and they just thought my body just was not meshing with their machine. They said it was just like a weird whatever. So they're glad that I went in because it wasn't registering. And they put me on fluids. They ended up admitting me to the hospital. Okay, you're going to stay for a while. Like, you're probably going to be here for a while. So again, I didn't pack a hospital bag. So I'm like, we passed the point. Like, I didn't. So, we grabbed a couple things when we went back to the ER, but not like a full bag. And they're like, we're going to start you on a magnesium drip. It's going to make you feel like crap. But it helps slow the contractions. It also helps if your baby is born now. So I'm just over 25 weeks in a couple days at this point. The magnesium drip also helps the baby's brain be protected if they were to be born this early. I believe with cerebral palsy, magnesium will help. That it's been shown to help with that.
Another mom that we interviewed had shared about the magnesium helping with that.
Was it Sarah?
It was Megan.
Oh, it was Megan. Okay.
Yeah, and it makes you feel like crap.
Yeah.
You get hot. Like I've never been so warm in my life. So you get all these like weird side effects, but they're like, we're going to give you this magnesium. We're going to give you a steroid shot to help the baby's lungs develop, because if they're born at this gestation, the lungs aren't going to fully,
Mhm.
be fully developed. They're going to likely be on a ventilator for a while, but this should help.
Mhm.
Um, and we're going to see how this goes. And they, had me on this fetal monitor the entire time I was there, watching the baby's heart rate and watching my heart rate.
Mhm.
Um, Overnight, the baby's heart rate and my heart rate elevated, higher than they wanted to see. So my heart rate was somewhere in the 120s, consistently, and the baby's heart rate was somewhere in the 190s consistently, which is too high.
Mhm.
So the doctors are like, we can't have this heart rate. We can't have your baby's heart rate this high for this long.
Mm.
The babies do not do well with this. It's not going to end well.
My goodness.
We need to deliver.
Oh my goodness.
So we need to get that baby out of there. You are looking at months in the NICU.
Mhm.
And they're like, we're gonna have a NICU
Would have been
nurse.
okay, right? Like,
Yep, we were
okay, baby.
yep, we were wrapping our head around a NICU stay. It's not what we wanted, but we
Mhm.
will take a live, healthy baby.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Um, they had a NICU nurse come in and talk to us about what that journey is going to look like.
Mhm.
And she talked us through the first week or two. And she said, in the first week, we just need to get past this first week and look for brain bleeds and look for XYZ and this and this. And what are you planning to do? Breastfeeding is all decisions that had to be made
Mhm.
in minutes. They said, so if your baby's delivered today, if this heart rate stays high, your choices are deliver your baby, do an amniocentesis to see if there's an infection. If there's an infection, deliver your baby. If there's not an infection, then they felt more comfortable having the baby stay in my
Okay.
belly for an extra day or two, because they couldn't figure out why our heart rates were so high. And they thought maybe an infection, but it
Again.
was a weird situation because I had no symptoms. I did not have a fever. Um, I had no pain like on my belly or anything like that. So it was deliver your baby, do an amniocentesis and deliver your baby, or maybe gain an extra couple days in the womb, which can equate to less time in the NICU.
Okay.
Mhm.
So given those choices, we decided to do an amniocentesis. We're like, if it can buy us a couple more days,
Mhm.
let's do it. If not, we know we're delivering today.
Right.
So NICU nurse was talking to us, and I remember asking, because I just read that statistic about survival rates
Mhm.
at 25 weeks, and I asked the NICU nurse, and I said, what are the survival chances? And she said, at this point, they're good. She's like, we don't even talk about them because survival chances are so high.
Good. Okay.
So I'm like, okay. So Garrett and I are just wrapping our head around having a baby in the NICU.
Yeah.
We're going to get through it. We've gotten through everything else so far. We can get through this.
Yeah.
And I said, so if I deliver today, what's that going to look like? And they're like, well, your baby is breech. So you will need a C-section,
Okay.
but we'll get you back there. We'll get you the epidural. It'll be like a normal delivery. It's not going to be like in the movies where they rush you back there.
Mhm.
I said, okay, so that's good to know. And they're doing the amniocentesis. They finally brought the amniocentesis in, at about 11 in the morning. They were doing the amniocentesis. They had the needle. For people who don't know what that is, they take a large needle, they go directly through your belly into the fluid around the baby, and they draw that fluid out. They use an ultrasound machine to make sure that they obviously don't
Mhm.
poke the baby, or cause any other further damage or anything like that, to you or the baby.
Mhm.
So they're doing the amniocentesis. They got the fluid out, and Nikki nurse was still in the room because she was like still talking to us about what to expect, but they came in to do this procedure. And we are looking at the monitor because they have the ultrasound machine up there watching the needle. And they're like, let's just check the baby's heart rate. And his heart rate had dropped to 67 during that procedure. And the doctor's like, we need to get this baby out now. And it was like the movies. They called stat. They ran me down the hall. I was literally undressing as I'm going down the hall because I still had pants on. I still had a shirt on. Because they're like, oh, if you're going to be here for a while, you might as well be in your own clothes, be comfortable. We can work around that. So I'm undressing as they're like running me down the hall. I remember I broke down crying, like hyperventilating.
Was Garrett with you running the whole time?
They wouldn't allow him to. He had to stay in the room.
Well, and with a C-section, so when I had a C-section, like Ben had to get prepared, and it took time for him to get prepared because you're open on a table. So he's got to get cleaned up and masked and a gown and gloves and a hat. And so I imagine if they're running you down the hallway, he doesn't have time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, because I don't know that they wanted him in there when they were trying to do this so fast. One of the doctors said after everything, between the decision to induce you to deliver this baby and when they want this baby out is 15 minutes. They want that done less than 15 minutes. So they ran me down the hall. I remember I was like hyperventilating, I was crying, and we passed this dad with 2 young kids. They were in the hallway. They were obviously there with family. And I remember trying so hard not to be crying in front of these kids.
That is so thoughtful of you in this extremely traumatic experience.
Yeah. It was a lot. There's so many thoughts that go through your head, and it's less than minutes. So they get me into the OR, which was just down the hall. And I'm back on the table. The anesthesiologist, so many people were talking at me. I remember the anesthesiologist saying, do you have anything loose in your mouth? And I said, nope. And she's like, okay, you're going to go to bed. You're going to go to sleep. They inserted a catheter. They're like, you don't get a choice. This is what's happening to you, and this is what's going on. And they're like, we need to insert a catheter. So that's going on. You're feeling that happen. One of the nurses is like, we don't have time to clean your stomach, so I am just dumping this fluid on your belly. So that we can get in there. And then I think between when they raced me out of that room and when I was sleeping was less than 4 minutes.
Wow.
So they did the C-section. Garrett did get allowed to come in before I was closed up. So he's like, I did see. And Grant was born, and they immediately started working on him. And he didn't make it.
What is Grant's birthday?
April 22nd of this year.
Oh, wow.
So about 6 weeks ago, when we first started messaging, I was still in the hospital.
Oh my God, Angel. Oh my God.
So
this is very new.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I'm still on maternity leave right now. And I go back next week. But he lived for 22 minutes. Garrett didn't get to hold him.
Take your time.
Thanks.
I am thankful that you have maternity leave and that you are able to have time to mourn and to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Me too. It's hard because I'm very much a person who likes to be busy, likes to keep my mind busy, and I'm not at work, so there's not enough to keep me busy. And so that's where those little things I can do every day, you're going to do your skincare routine in the morning. You're going to make sure you take your vitamins in the morning and the things you need to take at night, and drink your water. You're going to do a daily walk, and you're going to do stretches every day or, just gentle exercises as my body's still healing.
Yeah.
But Garrett was able to touch him while they were working on him. They, intubated him more than once. They did everything that they could. The infection, it did end up being an infection. They found it. It is a mystery as to how or why this infection happened. They said it was E. coli, which when I first was admitted into the ER, they do swabs to make sure you don't have an infection, and all of those came back normal. I did not have an infection. But the amniotic fluid around the baby had E. coli infection. The membrane, the amniotic sac around the baby was not ruptured, so we do not know how this infection got to the baby, and it did not get to me or anything. So we still don't have answers. I don't know that we're going to have answers after this. I just had my 6-week follow-up this last week with my doctor, and we talked about how we have no idea how this happened or why, or just how that infection even got to the baby if it didn't get to me first, if it didn't go through my body. And it was an acute infection is what they called it, which just means that it was a fast acting. I had not had it very long, or the infection had not been there very long. It was not a chronic infection that I've had for weeks. It was something that happened within that couple days, that weekend. And I racked my brain, like, what did I eat? Did I eat something with E. coli? Like, I was very careful, through the pregnancy. Again, it's, if I eat all these right things, everything will be fine. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what or how, and
we're never going to have out there that eat shit their entire pregnancy, and they have healthy pregnancies. So
yeah, that thought goes through my mind a lot, is like, someone doesn't know they're pregnant and they, are drinking, or they might be doing drugs, or they might be eating deli meat that they say that, you shouldn't have because of the risk of infection, or just, even just those little things, like they're out in the sun too long. Like, those are all things that I thought about. Yeah. And they have a perfectly healthy pregnancy.
Right.
Yeah. And we do it everything we can, down to surgery while I'm pregnant, and it still doesn't work. Yeah. And, one of the things, and I know, I'm sorry, I've talked so long. It's been a long journey.
No.
But I guess, we lost Grant, and I was in the hospital, and after we lost Nolan,
did you get to hold
we were, yes, we did afterwards. After he had passed, he went back to the room with us. So, that was something that we were able to do with all 3 of our babies. With Nolan, Brooklyn, and Grant, we were able to spend time with them afterwards. And that was something,
How much time?
It varied. Okay. Nolan, we spent time with him. We made the decision. It's, again, one of the things you don't think about is, that after our first loss, they're like, okay, well, what funeral home do you want to use? And
not what I'm doing right now. Oh my gosh. Like, yeah, I don't want to make these choices.
Yeah. What funeral home? Because we need to know where to release the body. Oh. And do you want a cremation, or do you want this? And, we worked with the same funeral home all 3 times. Again, fantastic place. They have a fund. It's called an Angel Fund, that helps parents in this situation, that have lost a baby, to help with the cost of a funeral or a cremation or an urn or whatever you choose to do. With Nolan, we made the decision not to, I could not, and I still, with all of our losses, wrap my head around handing my baby over.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And walking out of the hospital. So we chose to give Nolan to the medical staff a half a day or a day before we left the hospital so that we had that time to transition
Yeah.
in the hospital without our baby before we had to go home. Because I'm like, I can't just walk out of the hospital after I give my baby over.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did the same thing with Brooklyn. We were only there overnight, and we had given her to the staff a couple hours before we left the hospital, so we had that transition time. And Grant, we actually were able to keep in our room the longest, because I was in the hospital from Sunday to Thursday, and we had him in there for 2 full nights, and then most of the day the next day.
And could you hold him and snuggle him, or did he have to
Yes.
stay in a certain?
No,
Okay.
you can hold them as much as you want. The more time you hold them and the less time they're in the cuddle cot is what they call it. It is a bed that stays cold. So the more time you're holding them, the quicker their body would decompose. So while I'm sitting in the hospital after Nolan, after Brooklyn, we had this huge outpouring of support from family, friends, coworkers. They gave us gift baskets full of gift cards and just comfort things, all these different things that they thought we could use in our time of healing. And we were thankful for it. And I was sitting in the bed after we lost Grant, and I'm like, I don't need a gift card for Uber Eats. It is extremely extremely generous of people to do that, because I think a lot of time with loss, people don't know what to say. So they want to do something that they can't do. And if that's provide a meal or provide a gift card for a date night or anything like that, then that's what they want to do. And I was sitting there talking to Garrett, and I said, we don't need hundreds and hundreds of dollars in gift cards. We don't need all of this stuff.
Yeah.
We have such a great support system that anything we need, we can ask for, but we don't need people to go out of their way for it. So we're like, what else can we do? Because there's going to be people who aren't going to, they're going to want to do something. They're going to need to do something for us, because there's people who you tell them, no, thank you. And
will do it anyway, right? Because they love you.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, what if we try to raise money for a cuddle cot? What if, because I was talking to one of the nurses, and they had one cuddle cot in the hospital. So I'm like, what if someone else had a loss at the same time we did? Who do you choose?
Can you explain what a cuddle cot is?
Yeah, a cuddle cot, it is a cooling system. It is a mat that is hooked up to, I don't know if it's like an AC unit, but it's basically keeps this bassinet at a certain cold temperature. So when you're spending time with your baby after a loss, when you're not holding them, or if you want to spend the night with them, you can put them in this cuddle cot, and it will keep their body cold so that you can spend more time with your baby before decomposition happens. So
were you able
it goes from being able to spend a couple.
Were you able to use a cuddle cot with all 3 of the babies?
What?
I think
with Brooklyn, the hospitals was broken.
Oh.
So Nolan, Brooklyn's, it was broken at the hospital. So we used ice packs, which it worked, but it wasn't the same because it didn't have this like cooling effect all the way around the body. And it wasn't a singular cold temperature. So we still were able to spend more time with her, but not to the extent that we did with Nolan and Grant.
And for Nolan, like that was really important because you coded.
Yeah. And one thing I hadn't, shared with Brooklyn is after our delivery, my placenta refused to detach this time. So they had to bring me back into surgery after the loss, and that was a couple hours. Because they had to put me under and physically go in and do like a DNC, basically just to remove any tissue that was remaining in the placenta that was there. And with Grant, I was put completely under. So, when I woke up, I was very out of it, very groggy. And, I think with all three of our losses, something crazy has happened after, where it would have limited my time with my baby had these cuddle cots not been available, or had this cooling mechanism not been available. So
that Grant did not make it before you were completely out and then you woke up, or did your husband have to tell you? Like, how did
my husband had to tell me? So I was awake by a little after noon. So this all happened within an hour and a half, where we did the amniocentesis, decided to deliver, went under, had the C-section. Grant was born at 11:39 and passed away at 12:01.
Okay.
And I think by like 12:15 I was awake, and I wasn't even like fully out of my anesthesia. And I knew when I saw Garrett's face.
Yeah.
And the doctor asked Garrett, Garrett shared with me, like, do you want to tell her he didn't make it, or do you want me to? Garrett chose to tell me himself. So, he said, he's like, unfortunately, Grant didn't make it. So,
have you named all of your babies prior to them being born or after they were born?
With Nolan and Grant, we didn't know the gender.
Okay.
So we didn't know they were boys until after they were born. We had narrowed down names. With Nolan, we had just narrowed down some names, because again, we didn't think we'd be using them so soon. With Brooklyn, again, we had just kind of narrowed it down to a few names. So every time they were born, we had it down to a few names, and we just kind of decided after they were born. Grant was the only one that we're like, yep, if it's a boy, this is what we want. So we had chose that before he was born.
So this cuddle cot is really a beautiful gift in this, that you got this time.
Yeah, we wanted to see what we could do. I was talking to Garrett, like, we are forever thankful for being able to spend a night with our babies.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have been able to without the cuddle cots. If that was not something that was available, it would have been hours before we would have had to give the baby to the medical staff to go to their morgue, which essentially would be doing what the cuddle cot does. It's just able to do that in the room. I think it's really necessary, at least in our situation. Everyone's different. It is something that they offer when you know you're having a loss. They say, do you want to hold your baby or not? Do you want us to remove them from the room, or do you want to spend time with them? For the families that choose to spend time with their babies, this is completely life-changing, that you can spend a night with your baby. I'm a part of a lot of loss groups on Facebook and through different platforms, and there's people who share their stories that 20 years ago when they had their loss, there wasn't such a thing, and they got to spend minutes with their baby.
Mm.
And that's all they have. Um, being able to spend more time with your baby, you can make those memories. You can
take pictures.
get photos.
Yeah.
Yes. You can take photos. We had, it's a nonprofit called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. They have professional photographers that volunteer their time that come into the hospital and will take photos for you and edit them and send them to you. With Nolan, we did not get that option in Brooklyn too because of COVID. The nurses took amazing pictures for us of both of them. So we do have those memories. But with Grant, we did have a professional photographer come in. Her name was Brooke, and she was amazing. She is also a doula that specializes in women after loss. She is starting a nonprofit and for people going through a loss. And we are forever thankful for the photos and the memory. And it all stems back to we were able to have that time. So Garrett and I decided we're going to donate one of these. We're going to donate a cuddle cot. We want it to go
to a cuddle cot cost.
But between $2,000 and $5,000. Depending on the hospital and the delivery system and everything that they have set up. So, my goal was, I'm like, we'll raise however much, and then we will make up the difference to donate a cuddle cot to the hospital. Whatever the cost happens to be, we will figure out a way to make up the difference. So we did a GoFundMe just as an option for people who want to donate, who want to do something, but they don't know what to do. This is what we wanted people to do. We did not need anything, but maybe there's a family in the future who could benefit from this, who, if that cuddle cot is broken, when it was with Brooklyn, or they don't have one, not every hospital has one. A lot of the hospitals in, more remote areas don't have them. We were at a larger hospital for both of our deliveries, or all three of our deliveries. And we had that cuddle cot as an option, but not everywhere does. So let's see if we can do something about that. And that's what sparked the idea for the GoFundMe. And within the first day, the second day that the GoFundMe was live, we had raised thousands of dollars. It was, and I remember I was in the, at home, just gotten home, and I remember crying because I'm like, this is amazing. And just seeing people like I haven't talked to since high school. It's been over 15 years. And they're sharing it on their Facebook feed. They're like, this is someone that I know. Take a look. And then seeing donations and just the generosity of people.
It's a beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that you've been able to take this experience and turn it into this beautiful thing. I hope it supports your healing.
Yeah. And I think it does. It feels good to give back, to do something. And when someone goes through loss, when someone loses a child, when someone is dealing with fertility issues, or their family is not exactly how they picture it, whatever that journey might look like, there's a lot of times nothing you can say or do to make them feel better. And this was one thing that not one person did for us, but it helped us. So we're hoping to do the same thing for someone else.
And we at this podcast are very hopeful that we can continue helping you raise those funds, because I think that every birthing place needs to have at least two of these, because like you said, if one is being used or one is broken, like they need a backup, because it's so important that families be able to have the time with their babies that they need so that they can grieve and heal.
Yeah.
What is the GoFundMe called? Where can people go?
It is called The GoFundMe is called A Wish to Grant, support Angel and Garrett's Cuddle Cot donation. You can go to gofundme.com and then you can search for different fundraisers. And if you type in A Wish to Grant, ours should pop up.
Okay. We'll be sharing that on all of our social media, like Shannon said, and also on our website.
Absolutely.
Help
Thank you.
Well.
Um,
You do not have
I
to answer this question, but I am curious, and I feel like our listeners might be curious too, if you are going to try for another baby.
It is something that we are still thinking about. We have not come to a decision. I did talk to my doctor and I said, can I physically do this again? And she said, yes, but we don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
That's going to cause maybe a different result. So you can, but will it end the same way?
Yeah.
Because they're doing everything they can. We have talked about surrogacy. We have talked about adoption as other options. If we choose not to personally get pregnant again, it's not the end of our family building journey by any means.
There's many beautiful ways to build families.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We, have embryos. So a gestational carrier or surrogacy, could possibly be an option for us. Again, it is a pricey endeavor.
Yes.
It is a heart-wrenching endeavor, just like any other, just like adoption, just like IVF and any other fertility. So we haven't quite decided where we go from here, but we know we're not done. We're not done trying.
There's going to be a baby in that room.
Yeah, that's our goal. We're going to have the family that we want. We're already a family. We have our cat, we have our dog, we have each other. We grow our family. We're gonna get one more in here.
Yeah. Let's say this GoFundMe name one more time so that our listeners where they can go and help support this beautiful cause.
Yep, it is A Wish to Grant.
Thank you for listening and being a part of our community. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
If you'd like to connect, we can be reached at podcastfromtheretohere@gmail.com.
We hope you continue on this journey with us.